All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. So glad you guys are here. My name is Mary Rowling. Thanks for spending some time with us today and this afternoon. Hope everyone's enjoying their day so far. Today we'll be talking about automation and the reasons why SMBs need to automate their business processes. So we have a couple speakers today. From Empire Technologies, we have Ritwik. He is our Senior Director of Technical Consulting, and Lokesh, our Solutions Architect. We also have a guest speaker, Chad Park. He is the CEO and President of Acera Crowns. Thank you, Chad, for being a part of this webinar. We're really happy to have you.
Glad to be here.
All right. So before we get started, just wanted to share a little bit about who we are. So Empire Technologies was founded in 2004. We work to help companies enable a digital transformation using the latest technologies available. When we started in 2004, we focused mainly on web applications. But as Empire and technology started to grow, we started focusing on all types of mobile technologies and branching out with the different services that we provide. We use different technologies such as IoT, RPA, AI automation and chatbots, and other growing technologies. We also provide services for like analytics and back-end technologies as well as ADA website compliance. Essentially, we strive to be an innovation partner that you can rely on and trust, solving modern business problems with custom IT services. So that's just a little bit about who we are. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to learn some more. But enough about us. Now we'll go into the agenda. So today for our agenda, we'll start out with defining what exactly is workflow automation. And then after that, we'll talk about removing those time-consuming and error-prone processes, using automation to make business processes more efficient, which also includes our next step, which is eliminating those paper forms and clutter and helping automation to help organize as well. Then we'll speak about how workflow automation will minimize your cost and improve your customer satisfaction. And then towards the end, we'll share some examples of automation, including a case study from our guest speaker, Chad, where workflow automation has helped his Crowns manufacturing company. We'll finish with a quick summary. And throughout the presentation, feel free to ask any questions that you think of, but we will be answering questions at the end. We'll have a Q&A portion, so you can go ahead and type in your question whenever you feel like, but we will be answering those at the end. So from here on out, I'll pass it over to Ritwik.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone, for joining this this webinar session. Today, what we will discuss is the role of workflow automation and RPA, which is robotics process automation, in the world of small and medium businesses. Now, it all starts with digital transformation, and we are fortunate that we have Chad Park on this webinar as guest, and he'll also kind of like share how workflow automation helps his company. But let's kind of like go back a little bit and understand digital transformation. Digital transformation, as we know, is a popular topic of conversation these days. However, for more small and medium-sized businesses like the SMB owners, even the mere thought of it feels daunting. 48% of small and medium businesses aren't sure what digital transformation is. And our research kind of like tells us they're embracing a digital future. We define digital transformation as how businesses use digital technologies to create new or modify their existing business processes, practices, models, culture, and customer experience, and to meet that changing business and the market dynamics. So simply stated, what we look at today is it's about identifying how you must adapt your business to drive customer loyalty while maintaining a competitive edge in the digital space. And that's kind of like how the backdrop is all about automation and workflow automation and robotic process automation. So we can let's understand where robots come. Like workflow automation, everything that there's a bit of automation or mechanizations or computerizations, all of these kind of like words attached to it. So robots have been there in factories and production lines, but today, it's not just about the production line. So, there are so many sensationalist headlines like robots are taking our jobs. Automation is already a very commonly used. I mean, let's take a couple of examples. Today, basic customer service queries are already frequently handled by bots or your automation workflows. If you have like frequently asked questions, if you have a chat system on your website, parking and toll fees, they are paid via license plate recognition systems. They are also an automated services. Self-driving vehicles today operate in high-risk situations such as mines and try to reduce or minimize the risk to humans. Or even let's go to the NASDAQ side of the world. Equity trading today is routinely executed by algorithms which are automated workflows at the end of the day. So that's kind of like how it is. It is not just the factories. It has gone beyond the factories, and pretty much everyone is right now taking over. So when we understand the transformation of the digital waves, how did all these tie together, the workflow automation, the RPAs of the world? So to understand digital, it is important that we see the continuing evolution of technology. There are 4 waves of technologies that bring huge impact to our businesses. The first wave that started was internet, and it created a digital world. People started knowing that there is a business on the digital world, and internet companies started disrupting the way businesses are done online. The second wave was the mobile internet, which is basically the implication of the second wave is about computing in no longer physical locations like your office and home. You pretty much go mobile, work everywhere. The digital services and experience were delivered and consumed pretty much anywhere you are. The third wave was about the Internet of Things, which is where you merge the entities of physical and digital spaces. If the mobile wave extended the internet into people's everyday lives, the IoT extends it into the physical world around us, and that's kind of like where all of these tie together. The fourth wave, which we're going to be talking about today, is AI, RPA, robotics, and automation, the knowledge and automation. And it is becoming possible to use the outcomes of these researches in real business situations. And we'll show you some of the examples of how businesses, small and medium businesses, have used workflow automations and RPA to actually, rapidly increase their efficiency or reduce their cost, overall cost. And combined all of these together, we have a significant impact on business and society today. So it is all about, at the end of the day, certain algorithms that are being used using machine learning or deep learning or AI and robotics, which basically can analyze in real time and do certain processes which does not require a human intervention. That's pretty much what we will be talking about today. So let's see. Yeah. So moving on to what is digital automation or intelligent digital automation. Now, in essence, like intelligent digital automation is all about taking the robot out of a human, because at its core, it is an emerging set of new technologies that combines fundamental process redesign with certain amount of process automation and machine learning. It is you can call it a combination of business process improvement. So we all understand what business process management is. We understand how certain workflows can come into the picture. But what we need to understand is there are certain level of tools that can assist this knowledge that the back-end systems holds and removes all of these repetitive and replicable and routine tasks. And it can radically improve the overall customer journey, whether the customer is internal to your business or whether the customer is external to your business. So what it typically does, intelligent digital automation, is it starts mimicking activities that are carried out by humans, and at the same time allowing the humans to be more productive in certain jobs that they can be best at. So the promise at the end of the day for intelligent digital automation is radically enhancing the overall efficiency, increasing the workers' performance, reducing any kind of operational risk, or even improving the response time that affects the customer's journey with your organization. That's kind of like how intelligent digital automation is taking forward. So let's understand how these dynamics work. So this is a quick chart to represent the people, the process, the things which are involved in any business, and how it affects the external, which is the digital outside, and what it means today. So when we look at the digital outside, it is basically many firms that are doubling down on their customer experience. They do this because many of their customers engage both digitally and physically whenever and however they choose, often switching these channels of communications. While at the same time, they expect the same level of service across all channels. Plus, these customers and prospects expect their providers to have all the relevant data, documents, images, forms, and other information needed to service their requests, no matter which channel they're using at any given point of time. So these customers expect their suppliers to anticipate their needs and delight them during the moments of truth. That's kind of like how you think about the digital outside world. Now, but it is not always the case, because you have to be digital inside to support that digital outside. And many firms today in their digital journey are focusing their transformation strategies to change the digital tools which are there inside. And these organizations seek a big jump in quality of service or products, and lowering the risk of being non-compliant in any case, or even improving any hard-to-measure initiatives like collaborations that can lead to more innovative and competitive products. So taken together, digital outside and digital inside are two sides of the same coin. Although many enterprises mistakes it or sees it just to be one side of the coin that is on a digital transformation side of it. So just choose one of the other approach. First, try to focus that if you're going digital, whether that would impact the outside consumers and how that would impact. So that's kind of like a quick representation of how the digital outside and inside impacts each other. Now let's look at how these automation, the workflow automation, are commonly used, and we will look at on a scale of the work volume that is involved versus the work discretion. So if we have to focus on impacting our experts, now every company would have an expert team, and if we have to impact them, how do we impact? We can introduce or infuse some amount of artificial intelligence and make them as an expert assistant. Then we look at who are the best people in our team. How can we make them better or make them best? And that is exactly where we can create these workflows so that they can use the workflows and make it as a tool to get better insights or make better decisions. And that's how workflow comes into the place. And finally, how do we automate these procedural routine tasks? And that is basically where we can focus on robotic process automation using certain tools that can create these task automators, so that the people who are utilizing those tools and workflows can make better decisions, and even for people who wants to be an expert, use that as a way of getting insights. So a quick view of what is workflow automation now, and how exactly it works. So an automated workflow is nothing but a technology solution that automates all the processes involved in the workflow by eliminating most of the human intervention requirements. And instead of telling you why business workflow automation, I'll probably list out the indisputable benefits. Now, we have spoken about the 3 benefits that you see on the screen, but I'll talk about 5 now. So it definitely saves time, it increases production. The primary benefit of any automated workflow is that it saves time. The term automation itself refers to mechanization and computerization, as I mentioned earlier, which in turn is the process related to saving time to complete a job with accuracy by improving the speed. The next that I can think of is saving costs. Now, when an employee gets involved in more tasks that generate the most revenue for your business in the same working hours, it leads to more productivity. So if there are certain processes that can be automated, that will eventually save your business costs. Fewer administrative errors. We have seen that there are certain verticals which uses a lot of manual process of entering data, inputting data. And we all know to err is human. So during the process of data entries, there could be potential of missteps. But an automated application do not err or make any kind of blunders. The fourth one that we can think about is actionable data. And why actionable data is important, because today we get all of these automation tools also provides you rich graphical data with better visualization, and it's one of the most beneficial feature for any workflow automation process, because with a detailed report from a workflow tool that you might use, an organization can easily identify certain critical bottlenecks like resource allocations, availability of inventory, preempt any kind of like costly overruns. And the last, which is the fifth most important part, is the efficient task management. So improvement in task management is yet another major benefit of workflow automation. Now, what you see over here on the screen is a typical characteristics of workflow. So all the 5 benefits that I just spoke about will fall under any of these circumstances. Now, we can look at that there are many examples of processes in which workflow automation can be used to achieve a goal. Now, we need to understand how these workflow can characterize themselves, whether we are looking at from a predictability standpoint, or whether it is event-driven workflow, or whether it is mostly about human expertise that needs to be applied in that particular workflow. And at the bottom of the screen, what you see is basically the different models, whether we are introducing automation or bots or any kind of review process that requires manual intervention, and how those tasks can be performed, whether it is assisted by an AI tool or whether it is assisted by an automation that can work along with an AI tool to provide you a better response. So where are workflows? Like, workflows today are pretty much everywhere in every industry. I mean, it is gone are the days when there were reports talking about that workflow automation, RPA is just for the BFSI, or which is the banking and the financial institutes, or it is for healthcare. But today we see it is for everyone, whether it is a small and medium enterprise who are focusing, plain vanilla services or products, or whether it is under these brackets of industries. So what you see over here are certain color-coded. You have the green, the blue, and purple. The green is basically talking about certain workflows which are joint in nature, which means that it assists with the business process management. So if there is a business process management, I infuse the automation to get better turnaround times. Or if it is very process-centric, like underwriting, or ensuring that there is any kind of fraud visible management or any kind of fraud indications, those are very case-centric and very process-centric. So what I've listed down for each of the verticals is something that we'll go in details later, but insurance, healthcare, banking, government, everyone, retail, everyone kind of like today is focusing on workflow automation. And we'll talk about some of the stats and figures which are out there. But at the same time, it is important that we understand that workflow automation is for everyone today. So what is the robotic process automation? Now, we spoke about the words automation, workflow automation, business process automation, robotic process automation. They are all connected in some form or way. But robotic process automation is where you are automating some of these workflow processes, which is like mimicking the way people interact with the applications through a certain user interface, following certain rules to make those decisions simpler. And all of these put together has some amount of performance-related implication as well, because at the end of the day, businesses involve people, it involves place, it involves a lot of data, it involves a lot of systems. So how do we manage everything is where we infuse these robotic process automation tools. So, and how does it improve? Like, how do we make sense out of robotic process automation? So, in essence, let's go a little back again. Business process management or business process automation was all about strategizing and ensuring that businesses, makes it easier, for the people who are involved in the business. Whether there are a lot of manual works. Similarly, RPA is also all about whether you can detect any kind of inefficient process. There could be certain inefficient process which goes undetected. It is taking up cost for the business. There are a lot of labor costs which might go into it. Sometimes, even changing a process can bring up a lot of cost. And also, we need to understand the systems which are in place because, over the last 10 years, companies who have formed in the last couple of years, they kind of like make sure that each systems talk to each other. But when we go back like 20 years, all companies, they come with their own infrastructure, legacy applications. How do we make sure that they talk to each other, and whether it is important that they should talk to each other? So these are some of the things that we need to consider even before we embark on a journey of RPA. So how does it look like, the trends? Now, automation is definitely changing the finance and accounting, and we will talk a little bit about the financing side of the world. But most of the CFOs today, they feel that launching a digital project which involves automation is important because we have seen that the cost is definitely reduces when it goes into an automated mode. Then there is reduction in cost in terms of invoice management and how you can manage all of these different elements which relates to accounting side of the world. But at the same time, we also need to understand that for each of these different players, whether it is to do with banks or insurance or healthcare, for any kind of horizontal processes like human resource firms or typical finance and accounting, this is a trend that we've seen in terms of a report that we got from Cognizant Center for the Future of Work report. And if you look at it, over the year, you will definitely see that there is a good amount of cost saving happening for different kind of processes, whether it is related to claims, whether it is related to back office or support functions, whether it is related to customer management and sale or supply chain, or even new business underwriting and customer services for insurance side of it. Over the years, you will see a significant saving that you would get if you infuse this robotic process automation in any of the use cases that you feel is important for your company. So how are the market, like, what kind of trends that drive these kind of implementations? Now, when we look at, different kind of strategies, back in 2016, there was a report that was run, and RPA programs were considered a wider corporate initiative. Then in 2017, the figure kind of like moved from just 15% back in 2016 to about 64% in 2017, where organizations were involving workflow automations and robotic process automations enterprise-wide, which is like more of a strategic initiative. So not all RPA journeys start off with just that wide scope, enterprise-wide scope. We need to think big and start small. So that's kind of like what we are depicting over here is like, how do we understand those horizontal processes, and how do we qualify whether these processes are important for my business, whether it is towards the finance and accounting or human resource or procurement, supply chain, customer experience management. So all of these are different criteria, but the process-wise, whether we are looking at multiple system access, whether we see that there are a lot of errors happening, which process. So let's identify all of that and see which is high applicability, low applicability, and no applicability. So this is a typical report where we have seen for each of these business functions of an organization and where we see RPA or workflow automation is more applied. Now, the bottom half of the screen, you see what is the outlook, what kind of organizations, what kind of applications, and what kind of regions are more focused. So when we look at these segments, that is kind of like where we have seen that small and medium enterprises, for different kind of application outlook in region-wise, they try to see RPA as one of the biggest conduit for changing their current work drivers. So how to choose the process which is best fit for RPA? Now, this is a very rudimentary way of looking at whether a particular process is manual or repetitive. Now, I'll probably let Lokesh, who's our solution architect, to talk a little bit about on this slide, because when we look at process which best fits for RPA, we need to understand what are the different types of processes, whether they are business processes, whether they're just workflow processor, or overall, the processes involved to ensure that the drive works further. Lokesh?
Yeah, thanks, Rutvik. This is primarily an approach that we can take to identify if a process is a good fit for automation using RPA. So we basically identify the process, and then the first step is to just understand if it is highly manual and what level of manual intervention is required, and wherever this intervention is required, is it repetitive in nature. And if that qualifies, then we move to identify, is this something that we can put together as a series of rules to manage all those repetitive actions. And if it is something that we can define as rules, then we move to the next step. Is it something that requires certain level of electronic input, whether it's to do with getting the data from a different system, or it is about an email that is coming in, or it's about a purchase invoice that's coming in, etc. And if there is an electronic input or a system-based input that's required, then we move to the next step as to are all these inputs coming in a standard way, or are they available in a standard way? And then we identify what level of exceptions are there in terms of these inputs. These exceptions can be things like, that require data that we need to provide into the form, or we need to read from the form, is not available in a standard format or in a standard language. Then we look at, what are the level of exceptions that happen, and what level of manual intervention is required to manage these exceptions. So once we identify all these things, we also need to check what's the volume that we're getting, and based on that, we decide whether we need to move towards an RPA system, or whether we need to move towards other tactical solutions. Now, throughout this process, you can see that there are a lot of no's, and all of those no's lead to a process improvement initiative. Now, the process improvement initiative also can be at two levels. One, it is at a very high level where it is all oriented towards business process improvements that can relate to should I change the approach in which my suppliers or customers are sending me this information, or requesting for information? It is at that level. Or the second level can be, instead of considering RPA, can I look at a workflow automation in the first place? Now, to just give you an example, it can be a simple purchase to pay process where some customer or vendor is sending a purchase invoice, and then we need to get the purchase invoice and make a payment. And for this, we can handle it through RPA. If it is coming through an email, we take it up and then read the email, process it, and then ensure that the payment is processed through the relevant bank transactions. So that can be done. Now, if it is not available, then what we can do is we can just put in a workflow process where any incoming mail triggers a notification to a specific person. They receive the notification as a system in which they can go and see the details, and then they provide the required approval, and then it moves on to the next step. So that is more of workflow automation part. So that is the type of process improvement that we're talking here. So only when we have a base level automation that's available, we can move to the next step of using RPA to improve the level of efficiency that we can get throughout the process. So this is a high-level process that we can adopt to decide if RPA is a good candidate. And for all the no's, the answer is that we can look at workflow automation as an approach as a first step, and then move towards RPA to improve the efficiency.
Thank you, Lokesh. So when we understand the process, which is best fit for RPA, we also need to look at let's see if it's, there you go. What are the tools that are involved? And there are a lot of tools, and what you see over here is a matrix which talks about the top players out there. But it is important that when a tool is being used, what are the criteria that needs to be focused on? Whether that particular tool is derived on based on customer interest, or they're the large players. So we will talk about the three leaders in terms of tools that are being currently used for any kind of automation, whether workflow automation or robotic process automation. There are certain tools that are quite well used. And here's a quick comparison of the three, which is Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, and UiPath. And we do see that there are pros and cons for each of them, but we have seen in evidence in terms of us utilizing different kind of tools, we have seen that definitely these three come out to be as leader in the space of using RPA tools. And it also depends on how easy it is for us as a innovations partner, as a development partner, to understand those specific processes that can be automated in a much more easier on a visual basis, and whether they are web-based, so how do you control and how you manage all of these several workflow automations that would be part of this overall strategy. So that's kind of like leads us to believe that there are certain tools that we could utilize. In terms of the use cases, now where do we understand? So what Lokesh mentioned was the process of choosing where do you include RPA, or whether you just need to look at the workflow automation. But these are some of the use cases. Like I'll take a few examples. Like if I talk about back office and clerical or administrative activities, we can look at procurement. We can look at business service centers, so processes for internal user or customer support desks who can check their activities, or for instance, if it is human resources, automation of activities such as payroll and absence management, or starter and leaver processes, and any kind of employee data management can be automated. Or if we are looking at finance and accounting, we can look at accounts payable or accounts receivable, or any kind of those specific scenarios. Or whether it is overall customer experience management, whether we could include certain processes that can improve the customer loyalty programs, or any kind of marketing initiatives that you have. From an IT support standpoint, we can look at incident management, like running diagnostics. There are a lot of tools that can run diagnostics and aggregate results of how your business from a network standpoint is working, or whether it is a service digitization, which is self-service, providing customer self-service portals that can allow them to look at catalogs and process the execution of any kind of online purchase, or specific to any kind of channel shifts, like replacing high volume consumers from phone to email to mail, or just through different kind of process automation where they do not have to be online to basically talk to you and understand what's going behind my order. So these are certain things that we can definitely improvise. And at the same time, let's kind of like now again coming back to the finance side of the world, we have seen that finance functions, RPA can automate a lot of tasks which are repetitive in nature, and we are categorizing it in different kind of functions like bank reconciliation processes. There are a lot of workflows which can automate the login processes, go into the ERP systems, or even extract information from ledgers, by RPA bots, or whether it is from sales ordering and invoicing, automatic entry of sales inquiries, or invoice management, or posting the revenue back to your system. That is kind of like very interesting use cases that we are seeing of late from specific from small and medium businesses. At the same time, even fixed asset management, whether we are budgeting them, reconciling these fixed assets that we have, or looking at the reporting standpoint. Most of the time, small and medium businesses will definitely think that, okay, yes, I do have an Excel file where I have my master data, but at the same time, is this master data giving us certain kind of insights, whether these master data files are giving us a forecast or some kind of information that can help me make certain business decisions overall. Those are certain things workflow automations can do. At the same time, even looking at inventory management or receivables and payables management, or financial statement closing, tax planning, there's a lot of automation that is happening around these specific areas for small and medium businesses, which could quickly be automated. And overall, it can be there cannot be any kind of errors, or overall efficiency can also improve the business. So we look at a couple of case studies where we have seen that a workflow automation has helped. And this is for one of our clients who provides insurance benefits. And what initially they had was a specific team who used to prepare all these large documents, ensures that brokers have information about these different kind of services. And there's like hundreds of documents that they used to go through on day-to-day basis. Then there is another team who would take these information from employers to create census reports, from brokers to basically fill in the details and create that entire master data file that would finally go into the core app, so the users at the end of the day can look at the services that they have selected. And this entire process of just one particular client or one particular customer of the client that has to move into the core application used to take about 6 hours of time, just to managing, filtering the data, uploading the files, ensuring that the files are protected, and all of that used to take about 6 hours. Now, when we infused automation, we saw that all of these work, which is like downloading the documents through the portal in a CSV format, extracting the data from, we created rules or workflows that automatically extracts the data, furnishes the data into a web application, and that web application then pushes the information to the core application. The entire process reduced by 5 hours, so it's like about 1 hour of time. So overall result that we saw was it definitely reduced the turnaround time. There were 0 errors, because when the team was doing manual entry, there were issues with entering the correct name, the phone numbers, some change in numbers and things like that. So 0 errors. It had a very high accuracy, and it saved loads of man hours. So that's one of the key thing, and this is for a small and medium enterprise which just started back in 2014-15 time frame, and they've been focusing a lot on these digital transformation tools which can automate some of the processes. The next case study is about the grant management institutes, and what we did was we created a client website that had all of the information about how the grant systems flow through, and it gives you access to manage your grants. And when we use the robot that was designed, that it would log in, ensure that all the after the robot logs in, there are certain workflow which gets automated, which is based on the searches that has been done. It will automatically find the grant. It will infuse the information into the grant. It will make sure that the grant details are then converted into a PDF format for document management, and then finally you have the master data file, which is the final grant file. So one of the key things that we looked at over here is automating the PDF download. Now, as I mentioned earlier, workflow automation can be process-oriented, or even can be just a case-oriented, which is for a particular part of the process where you can automate. So it is important that we understand, where do we want to include a workflow automation process. Now, before we go into the next couple of slides, I would like to hand over the pedestal to Chad Park, and Chad will be sharing his view of how a workflow automation helps his business. Over to you, Chad. I'm going to control the slides.
Okay. So Acero Crowns, we manufacture pre-formed dental crowns. So rather than trying to explain all the details of our product, basically we basically sell shoes, right, for teeth. Everybody has 2 feet, everybody has teeth. So our crowns are small crowns that are pre-made, so it's not custom made, it's pre-made. So we've got about 200 SKUs, and we sell over 1 million crowns a year to dentists. These are the crowns that dentists use to fix children's teeth. We're a small business. Our revenue is right about $2 million a year. And when we started, I was, just like a lot of small business, I was focused on product development. I wasn't too focused on, okay, how are we going to fulfill these orders when sales start to increase? We sold exclusively through one dealer, but as sales picked up and we started to get bigger dealers to carry our product, orders started to increase. And so I'll tell you the problem. The problem was we were extremely inefficient. Everything was manual. So I'll just kind of go over how the order process was before we implemented all this automation through Empire. A dealer would submit a purchase order via email. We would open up the email attachment, manually enter that order into our system, go and select the products, get them ready for shipment, then log into UPS or FedEx and manually enter the shipment, print out the shipping label, affix it on the package, let the dealer know that the package was on its way. We would have to enter the dealer's email address in the UPS portal for the UPS to send them an update with the tracking, ship it out, and at the end of the month, we would do inventory reconciliation. We had no way of keeping real-time inventory. We would just do manual inventory counts at the end of the month. Then we would obviously pass on that order to our bookkeeper, who would then create the invoice and email to the dealer for our invoicing. So you can imagine all of that was extremely inefficient. And so we sat down with Empire and basically just told them what our current process was. And so they just sat and listened. And then I told them what I would like to have automated, and obviously they had a lot of suggestions as well. So now we have Empire established a order portal. So basically, the dealers log into the portal, enter their order. The order shows on our portal as order is placed. We open up the order. As soon as we open up the order, like one click, we open up the order. It automatically sends that dealer a notification that their purchase order has been received. When we fill the order, no longer do we have to go and manually go into UPS or FedEx. The shipping is already integrated on the portal, so basically our fulfillment employee is on the computer, clicks, opens up the order, fulfills the order, then one more click, and the shipping label comes out. Totally automated. She doesn't have to enter who the customer was, the shipping address, all of that's taken from the dealer account. And once she prints out the shipping label, that generates the automatic email back to the dealer telling them tracking information and also gives them the invoice. The invoice is automatically generated, so we don't have to manually tell our bookkeeper or our accountant to generate an invoice. So order tracking, order status, invoicing, all have been automated along with the shipping label. With that, it also takes into real-time inventory. So all of our inventory counts are entered into the portal, and as soon as an order is shipped out, that is deducting that those products from our inventory, so we've got a real-time view of what our inventory is without having to do these once-a-month manual inventory counts. So you can imagine how much labor, hours, and human mistakes has been eliminated. One employee in front of a computer has basically, with a couple of clicks, can do receiving order, fulfillment, order tracking, invoicing, inventory, all in a matter of a couple of clicks. So the process was, a 1,000% increase in our efficiency.
Thank you, Chad. That was excellent. So our experience working with Acero accounts was very important, because it kind of like gave us a lot of view in terms of how small and medium businesses are functioning, and how these different small processes can be automated to make the job easier. At the end of the day, that's what we are looking at, is making the job easier for the person who's sitting behind the desk and solving their problems. So in summary, what we look at is basically the focus areas. Let me see. There you go. So any kind of process-laden or paperwork-intensive industries, taking an example of finance, healthcare, real estate, legal, government, education, are particularly good fit when it comes to workflow automation and RPA. Now, workflow automation is primed to interact with other applications. So one of the examples that Chad mentioned was how these different kind of systems had to talk to each other at the end of the day to make the process easier. And so because processes are not locked into just one vendor system, it is easier because most of the workflow automations can talk via APIs. So at the end of the day, your workflow automation will ensure that it talks among each other. And when we look at the entire market, it's a $6 billion market, just RPA by itself, and how a lot of businesses are actually focusing on introducing different kind of automations within their systems. So what are the key takeaways from today's discussion? Now, key takeaways are, before you even go into a workflow automation roadmap, understand what are the specific processes that you would like to automate. So start small. Start with just one particular process, one use case, which is whether it is process-based use case or whether it is a case-based use case. So look at that particular element. Then establish a method of how would you identify, whether that is the right kind of process that needs to be managed or automated. Look at the volume of work that goes into that particular process, because those are some of the key drivers, as Lokesh mentioned. Volume, the cycle times, any kind of operational complexity that is involved needs to be derived as one of the key business case. For example, what Chad quoted from his business case perspective, the key drivers were definitely the volume of information that had to be automated when it comes to order, inventory, shipping, the labeling. All of these systems had to coexist and connect with each other and talk to each other. And that's where the potential use case of a workflow automation came into place. Also look at how do we design, what kind of training is required for you as an organization owner to decide that this particular process needs to be supported in the long run, because it is not a one-time fix. A process has to keep improving. Once you've completed with one of the workflow automation, you can always look at enhancing it. You can always look at how do that function with other other business functions of your organizations. And RPA is also about how it goes with the DNA of the organization, how it can be managed, whether you would want to manage it internally or whether you would be looking at a development partner, and how and those evaluation criteria that I mentioned earlier is something that you have to think through when it is required, that whether my business is right for a new workflow automation process. And also at the end of the day, automation will definitely increase effectiveness from not just from a process perspective, but it will also value the people who are behind your organization, because you're making them work efficiently and not overworking them. So ensuring that they kind of like focuses on things that they want to do from a business perspective. So those are the key takeaways. There's definitely one thing that we would want to want you to do, take that after the session, is identify these lists of workflows that you think are the best candidates, and assign any kind of value that you would want to focus on from a complexity perspective, from an impact or ease of implementation, or just pick any specific business function and think which would be the best. Okay, so and this is for all the participants in today's webinar. Feel free to reach us if you want to talk about your business, want to understand how automation can work for you. Feel free to call us, email us. We would be more than glad to discuss with you in the near future. So before we kind of like end this session, we have another 9 more minutes. So we'll look at a few of the questions that we have got. Mary?
Yes, thank you, Ritwik. So for some of the questions, first we have, this is an interesting question. Is RPA the first or only step in automation for SMBs? Lokesh, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, thank you. RPA is not necessarily the first step. I think we just walked through the process of how we select the candidate for RPA. And in that process, I had explained that we can consider workflow automation also as an approach that we can take. So it all depends on what level of manual process you have and how repetitive they are in nature, and how many resources are involved in that process. So we can consider all those things, and then based on that we can decide whether workflow automation using open source tools is the first step, or whether we can go to a full-fledged RPA type implementation where a lot of things can be done using the RPA tool as well.
Hi, thank you, Lokesh. Here is another question. Is it possible to automate real estate business processes?
Yes, I think any business process can be automated. I think in our experience, I think we have covered a few slides about various domains, and here included real estate also as a process. So we recently worked with one of our customers where we automated a process by which brokers are onboarded. And that onboarding activity involves various forms to be filled and processed before they are actually given the go-ahead to work for that particular company. So yes, a lot of business processes can be automated from a workflow level, and also using RPA for real estate industry.
Okay, thank you, Lokesh. We actually have one for our guest presenter, Chad. Chad, how long did it take for Acero Crowns to start seeing results in efficiency?
The efficiency was obviously immediate after the portal was implemented and went live. Between the first meeting of sitting down and discussing our needs to formulating the plan, and obviously the 30 days to implement, we did it by sections, stages. But I mean, it was. I think we had the portal go live within, off the top of my head, I can't remember. It was like 3 months or something like that. But once we push the go button, obviously the impact of the efficiency is immediate because we're cutting down on all those manual processes. So yeah, immediate impact.
Thanks, Chad. There was another question for you as well. How was it like working with Empiger, and what were some of the factors for selecting them?
Previous to this, I had a large company. We owned and operated several dental offices, and we had our own IT department. And my CIO, Chief Information Officer, I introduced him to Empiger, and I feel like my CIO is extremely talented and intelligent. And he came back and talked with Empiger on a separate project that he was, trying to launch. And he came back impressed with Empiger. Obviously, me being a dentist, I don't have any background on, IT. So I respect his recommendation. He felt like Empiger knew what they were doing. Plus, once I met with Empiger, I saw the list of the past clients they had. I mean, it was very respectable in itself. Fortune 500 companies, large companies, far larger than my 2 million annual revenue company. So that put a lot of trust in giving me confidence. And then lastly, when we met with them, they sat and listened to me before throwing out any suggestions. They just sat, not trying to sell me anything, just listening to my problems, and then we came up with the solutions mutually. So all those things combined led me to selecting Empiger.
All right. Thank you, Chad. I think we have time for just about one more question. What can be a good tangible measure to identify if process automation is required or not? Lokesh, would you like to take this one?
Okay, so now a tangible measure, I hope by saying that they're referring to what's something that they can really look at to see if the benefits are worth it or not in terms of investment in workflow automation. So I think first and foremost is the number of full-time employees, or the term that's used in the industry is full-time equivalents. So it is like how many people are really involved in that particular process, and whether that's something that happens on a daily basis, or is it something that happens only towards the start of the month or in a specific period, etc. So the first factor that can be used is to understand that, and that can give a good measure to see if the investment in workflow automation or RPA will really result in the level of cost savings and efficiency that we are looking at. And the next step is obviously some of the other tangible things like, okay, how much of paper is saved, and how much of forms printing and all those costs that are going to be saved. So that can be another measure. So it depends on what I mentioned, the full-time equivalents, the volume of other, let's say, aspects that is involved in the workflow, and those two can be good measures to decide if an investment in workflow automation is really required or not.
Okay, thank you, Lokesh. First off, just wanted to thank everyone for coming out today and sharing the afternoon with us. I'd like to share an extra thank you for Chad for participating and answering any questions.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Chad, so much. I mean, it was definitely a good session, and thank you for participating with us on this session. And to all participants, we hope that you've got some of the key takeaways from this webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to reach us. And thank you, everyone. Have a blessed day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you.